He walked into the restaurant carrying a diaper bag over one shoulder and a sleeping 2-year-old against his chest, and the woman waiting for him at the corner table had no idea that within the next hour, she would hear a story so devastating it would change the course of her entire life, and his daughter's too. "You must be Claire," he said quietly, careful not to jostle the small girl asleep against him. "I'm Owen. Owen Marsh. And this is Ivy. She's 2. I know this isn't exactly what you signed up for tonight." 20 minutes earlier, Owen had been standing in his kitchen in paint-stained jeans, phone pressed to his ear, listening to his babysitter apologize through a wall of static about a family emergency 2 states away, while Ivy tugged at his pant leg asking for juice in the specific, insistent tone only a toddler can manage. He had stood there for a long moment, staring at the calendar on the fridge where he'd circled tonight's date in blue marker weeks earlier, the first attempt at anything resembling a normal evening since his life had rearranged itself around bottles and daycare pickups and 13-hour renovation days. He could have texted an excuse. His thumb had actually hovered over the message for a full 10 seconds. But something, exhaustion maybe, or a stubborn refusal to keep disappearing from his own life, made him grab the diaper bag instead, scoop up his sleeping daughter, and drive to the restaurant anyway, half convinced he was about to become the strangest first date this woman had ever had. Claire Bennett looked up from her menu, momentarily thrown by the sight of a sleeping toddler draped over the shoulder of a man she had agreed to meet for a first date exactly 9 minutes ago. "Would you like me to ask if they have a high chair?" she offered, recovering quickly. "No, thank you. She'll sleep through the whole thing if we're lucky." Owen slid into the booth across from her, adjusting Ivy so her head rested against his collarbone. "My sitter canceled 20 minutes before I was supposed to leave. My mom was going to step in, but she's snowed in 3 states away. I almost texted to cancel on you. I genuinely don't know why I didn't." "I'm glad you didn't," Claire said, and she meant it, surprising herself with how much she meant it. "Can I get you anything?" "Water's fine. And thank you for not walking out the second you saw me carrying a small human." "I don't walk out on people," Claire said. "Not anymore." Something in the way she said it told Owen there was a story underneath those words, the same way there was a story underneath his. "So, besides surprising strangers at restaurants with sleeping children," Claire said, leaning forward, "what should I know about you?" "Oh, where to begin," Owen said, and for the first time that night, something like a real smile crossed his face. "I'm a single dad who drinks too much coffee, forgets to eat lunch most days, and has become disturbingly good at braiding hair through pure necessity. I moved to Ashford Creek about 18 months ago. I restore old buildings for a living, mostly forgotten historic properties nobody else wants to touch. Right now I'm 3 months into gutting a 100-year-old brownstone on Larkspur Street that everyone told me was a lost cause." "That actually sounds fascinating," Claire said. "I like fixing things people have given up on," Owen said simply. "Probably says something about me. What about you?" "My cousin has been trying to set me up for almost a year, and I finally ran out of excuses to say no." "Seriously?" "I was engaged 2 years ago," Owen said, his voice steady but quieter now. "Her name was Renee. 3 weeks before the wedding, I found out she'd been seeing someone else through most of the engagement. Someone with considerably more money than a guy who fixes up abandoned brownstones." "I'm sorry," Claire said, and something in her tone made it clear she wasn't offering the kind of hollow sympathy people give because they don't know what else to say. "What about you?" Owen asked. "I feel like I've done nothing but talk about my own disaster for the last 10 minutes. Claire turned her water glass slowly on the tablecloth. "I went through something similar, actually, just without the child involved. I was with someone for 5 years. Thought we were building toward a life together. Turned out he'd been building toward a life with someone else the entire time, he just hadn't told either of us about the other. I found out from a mutual friend, not from him. That was almost 3 years ago now. I moved to Ashford Creek not long after, started over completely, new job, new apartment, new everything. My brother kept telling me I needed to actually date again instead of just working 60-hour weeks at the firm. Tonight was me finally running out of excuses to tell him no. So we're both professional excuse makers, Owen said. Claire corrected, and something about the way she said it made him smile for real, the first unguarded smile of the night. Funny, isn't it? Owen said. Two strangers sitting across from each other at dinner, both carrying things we never planned on carrying. What about you? Ivy's mother, I mean, if you don't mind me asking. That's a longer story, Owen admitted, glancing down at his sleeping daughter. Her name is Vanessa Cole. We were together almost 3 years. I really believed we were happy. Then I found out I was going to be a father, and everything changed almost overnight. She told me she wanted this. That's what she said, anyway. But once Ivy was actually born, something in her just shifted. She didn't leave all at once. Honestly, I almost wish she had, because that would have been easier to understand. She just became distant, like being a mother was something she'd started to resent. By the time Ivy was 5 months old, Vanessa was already gone emotionally, even though her body was still technically in the apartment. And then one afternoon, while I was at a job site, she packed her things and left. No note. No goodbye. She just left. That's not even the worst part, Owen continued, his jaw tightening slightly. 4 months ago, her uncle passed away. Turned out he'd left a trust fund behind for any great nieces or nephews, split evenly among them. Ivy's share alone comes out to almost $9 million. And suddenly, miraculously, Vanessa remembered she had a daughter. Claire set down her water glass slowly. She wants custody. Not because she wants Ivy, Owen said. Because whoever holds primary custody controls the trust until Ivy turns 18. Her lawyer filed papers 3 weeks ago. I have a hearing in 5 weeks, and here's the part that keeps me up at night. I make $60,000 a year restoring old buildings by hand. Vanessa's new husband is a corporate attorney worth considerably more than that, and she's got a legal team that could bury me in paperwork before we even reach the courtroom. She's suing you for custody over money, Claire said flatly. That's the whole case, Owen said. I shouldn't be dumping all of this on a first date. I'm sorry. She's sleeping so peacefully right now, and here I am ruining a nice dinner with all of it. Don't apologize, Claire said, and she meant that too. I think you might be one of the strongest people I've met in a long time. When Ivy finally stirred awake near the end of the meal, blinking up at the unfamiliar restaurant lights with the serious, unblinking gaze only a 2-year-old can manage, Owen introduced her to Claire. Are you Daddy's friend? Ivy asked, studying her with total seriousness. I'd like to be, Claire said. Ivy considered this for a long moment, then reached into the diaper bag and produced a small stuffed elephant missing one felt ear. You can hold Ellie. She likes new friends. Claire took the elephant with the gravity of someone accepting an award. Thank you, Ivy. I'll take very good care of her. Owen watched the exchange with something loosening in his chest, some tightly wound thing he'd been carrying for months finally easing. Outside under the restaurant awning, waiting for his ride, he asked if he could see Claire again. I have to warn you, Claire said. This isn't going to be easy. There's a custody battle coming, and it's going to get ugly. Vanessa doesn't lose gracefully. I don't scare easily, Claire said again, before Owen could even finish his warning. Everyone says that until they meet Vanessa Cole. Try me, Claire said. Owen studied her in the glow of the streetlight, this stranger who had sat through an ambush of a first date without flinching once. Okay, he said finally. Try me. Over the following weeks, Claire became a quiet, steady presence in Owen and Ivy's life. She picked Ivy up from daycare when Owen's job sites ran late. She learned the theme songs to every cartoon Ivy loved and sang them badly on purpose just to hear her laugh. Slowly, carefully, Owen let himself fall for her, terrified the whole time that it was too good to survive contact with reality. There was a Saturday morning 3 weeks in when Claire showed up at Owen's half-renovated brownstone with pancake mix and a bag of strawberries, because Ivy had mentioned once, in passing, that strawberry pancakes were her favorite. Owen stood in the doorway of the makeshift kitchen and watched Claire let Ivy crack the eggs even though half the shell ended up in the batter. Watched her laugh instead of getting frustrated. Watched her wipe flour off her sleeve and declare it an improvement. "You don't have to do all this," Owen said quietly, once Ivy had wandered off to watch cartoons and left them alone with the dishes. "I know I don't have to," Claire said, drying a plate. "I want to." "People say that," Owen said. "Vanessa said that too, in the beginning." Claire set the plate down and turned to face him fully. "I'm not going to spend the rest of whatever this is competing with a ghost, Owen. I can't promise you I'm perfect. But I can promise you I'm not going anywhere the first time things get hard. If anything, that's usually when I show up more." Owen didn't answer right away. He just crossed the small kitchen and kissed her, soft and certain, the first time he'd kissed anyone since Vanessa left. It felt less like starting something new and more like finally exhaling a breath he'd been holding for 2 years. There was an evening in late September when Ivy spiked a fever at daycare, and the center called Owen off a job site with the kind of message that made his stomach drop before he'd even read the whole thing. He arrived to find Claire had beaten him there by 10 minutes, having listed herself as an emergency contact weeks earlier without making a production of it, sitting cross-legged on the floor of the daycare's quiet room with Ivy curled against her, humming something low and off-key. Owen stood in the doorway for a moment just watching, Ivy's small hand fisted in the fabric of Claire's blouse, Claire's palm resting steady against her back, and he felt something in his chest crack open in a way that had nothing to do with fear anymore. "She's okay," Claire said softly, before he could even ask. 101.2. "I already called your pediatrician's after-hours line. They said fluids, rest, and Tylenol if it climbs past 102. "You didn't have to do all that," Owen said, crouching down beside them. "I know," Claire said. "I wanted to." It was becoming something of a refrain between them, and every time she said it, Owen believed it a little more. That night, after Ivy's fever broke and she was finally asleep in her own bed, Owen found Claire in the kitchen washing bottles that didn't need washing, the way people do when they need their hands busy while their mind settles. He came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, and rested his chin on her shoulder. "I keep waiting for the part where this gets complicated," he admitted quietly. "Where you realize what you actually signed up for and change your mind." "I already know what I signed up for," Claire said, turning in his arms to face him. "I signed up for a toddler who thinks Ellie the elephant needs her own seatbelt in the car, and a man who apologizes for needing help like it's a character flaw instead of just being human. I'm not going anywhere, Owen. You're going to have to actually believe that eventually." Reality arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in the form of a silver sedan parked outside the brownstone. Vanessa Cole stepped out of it wearing a coat that cost more than Owen's monthly mortgage payment, sunglasses pushed up into perfectly styled hair. Owen froze on the sidewalk, Ivy's hand gripped tight in his. "Owen," Vanessa said, smiling, the smile he used to think was warm and now recognized as calculated. "You're looking well. What are you doing here?" Owen asked, pulling Ivy slightly behind him. "Can't a mother visit her daughter?" Vanessa asked, crouching down to Ivy's level. Ivy shrank back against her father's legs, uncertain of this stranger with the familiar face. "You don't get to do that," Owen said, his voice shaking with fury he was trying hard to keep controlled for his daughter's sake. "You don't get to disappear for a year and a half and then show up playing Mother of the Year." "My lawyer says I have visitation rights pending the hearing," Vanessa said, standing back up, the smile gone now, something colder underneath it. "I'm exercising them." "Your lawyer filed that motion 3 days ago. There's no court order yet." "There will be," Vanessa said. "And when there is, you'll wish you'd been more cooperative." Claire arrived at that exact moment, walking up from where she'd parked, and something in her face went very still when she saw the scene unfolding. "Everything all right here?" she asked, coming to stand beside Owen. Vanessa looked her up and down with open contempt. "And who's this? The new girlfriend?" "Careful, Owen. Women like this don't stick around once they realize there's a custody fight involved. And trust me, once I have Ivy, there won't be much left to stick around for." "You need to leave," Claire said, her voice quiet but carrying an edge Owen hadn't heard from her before. "Or what?" Vanessa asked, stepping closer. "Or I call the police and explain exactly why a woman with no custody order is trying to approach a child against her father's wishes." Vanessa's jaw worked for a moment, calculating. Then she laughed, a short ugly sound, and stepped back toward her car. "Enjoy this while it lasts," she said. "In 5 weeks, none of this matters. I win, or I make sure you're too broke to fight me. Either way, I get what I came for." She drove off, and Owen sank down onto the front steps, shaking. Claire sat beside him, pulling both him and Ivy into her arms. "I can't lose her," Owen whispered. "You won't," Claire said. "I promise you, you won't." 2 days later, Vanessa escalated further. She showed up at Owen's job site, charming her way past the crew with a story about needing to discuss co-parenting logistics, rattling Owen so badly he nearly walked off a scaffold. That night, when he finally told Claire what had happened, her face went through something complicated: anger, worry, and then a kind of quiet resolve that steadied him more than any promise could have. "She's trying to scare you into giving up," Claire said. "That's all this is. A woman with no real case tries to win by making you too exhausted to fight." "It's working," Owen admitted. "Not while I'm here," Claire said. "Tomorrow we go see my brother. Today, we get you a restraining order. And starting now, you don't handle Vanessa Cole alone. Not ever again." That night, after Ivy was asleep, Claire sat at Owen's kitchen table and made a phone call. It was to her brother, Marcus Bennett, a family law attorney with a reputation sharp enough to cut glass. "I need your help," Claire said. "It's serious, and it's personal." Marcus listened to the whole story without interrupting, and when Claire finished, he was quiet for a moment. $9 million is a strong motive for a woman who never wanted a kid to suddenly want one, he said. "People like that leave trails. Get me everything, emails, texts, financial records, if he can get them. If she's only after the money, I guarantee she's already made mistakes trying to get it." Over the following weeks, Marcus built the case with methodical precision. He subpoenaed Vanessa's financial records and found something Owen hadn't known. Vanessa's new husband had been quietly forced out of his law firm 6 months earlier over an ethics complaint, and the two of them had been living well beyond their means ever since, drowning in credit lines nobody outside their household could see. The custody suit wasn't really about love, and it wasn't even purely about greed in the abstract. It was about two people drowning in debt who had found a life raft with a toddler's name attached to it. Marcus also found messages, sloppy, arrogant messages Vanessa had sent to a friend, bragging about how easy it would be to get the kid for a couple of years, control the trust, and set herself up for good. She hadn't expected anyone to ever see them. She'd been careless, because she'd never respected Owen enough to think he could fight back. The hearing arrived on a gray Thursday morning in October. Owen sat at the defendant's table in a borrowed jacket, his hands folded tightly in his lap. Vanessa's lawyer opened with practiced confidence, painting Owen as unstable, a man who worked with his hands for modest wages, unable to provide the financial stability a growing child deserved, someone drowning under the weight of job sites and a mortgage he could barely afford. He painted Vanessa as a reformed woman, ready to step into motherhood, financially secure, eager to give her daughter opportunities her father simply couldn't. Then it was Marcus's turn. He rose slowly, methodically, and placed a single folder on the table in front of the judge. "Your Honor," Marcus said, opposing counsel would like this court to believe my client's daughter would be better served with Ms. Cole. I'd like to submit Exhibit A, a text message sent by Ms. Cole 9 weeks ago, for days after her uncle's will was read. The message appeared on the courtroom screen, Vanessa's own words, plain for the judge to read. Get the kid for a couple of years, control the trust, set myself up, then who cares what happens after she turns 18. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Vanessa's face drained of color. That's taken out of context, she said, half rising from her seat before her lawyer pulled her back down. Would you like to explain the context, Ms. Cole? Marcus asked, turning to face her directly. Please, enlighten the court. What context makes "who cares what happens after she turns 18" an acceptable thing for a mother to say about her own daughter? Vanessa said nothing. Her lawyer whispered something urgent in her ear. No further questions for this exhibit, Your Honor, Marcus said. But I do have questions for Ms. Cole directly, if the court will allow it. The judge nodded, and Vanessa was called to the stand, her composure fraying with every step. Ms. Cole, Marcus began, when was the last time you saw your daughter before this custody suit was filed? Vanessa hesitated. It's been a while. Would 18 months be an accurate estimate? I've been busy. Busy, Marcus repeated. Doing what, exactly? Your financial records show significant debt accumulation over the past year, along with your husband's departure from his firm under an ethics review. What have the two of you been doing with your finances since then, Ms. Cole? Objection, Vanessa's lawyer said weakly. Relevance. I'll allow it, the judge said, leaning forward with visible interest. Now answer the question. Vanessa's jaw clenched, searching for an exit that didn't exist. I'd also like to submit Exhibit B, Marcus continued, unshaken. Documentation confirming Ms. Cole's husband's forced departure from his firm, along with joint debts totaling over $280,000, concealed from this court in the financial disclosure filed 3 weeks ago. Vanessa's lawyer shot to his feet. Objection, Your Honor, this is overruled, the judge said flatly, her eyes fixed on Vanessa with open disdain. Sit down, counselor. Marcus wasn't finished. Meanwhile, Your Honor, my client has raised his daughter alone for 18 months, working full-time restoring properties by hand, without a single dollar of support from Ms. Cole, who has not seen her daughter, called her daughter, or sent so much as a birthday card in that entire time, until the day she learned there was money attached to her name. The courtroom was silent. Owen felt tears sliding down his face, not from fear this time, but from something like relief finally breaking loose after months of holding it back. Vanessa's lawyer attempted a final redirect, asking her to clarify her intentions toward Ivy going forward, clearly hoping to salvage something resembling maternal warmth for the record. Vanessa opened her mouth to answer, glanced once at the judge's unreadable expression, and then, for the first time all morning, seemed to understand exactly how badly the room had turned against her. I love my daughter, she said, her voice thinner than it had been an hour earlier. I got scared. About money. About whether I could even provide for her the way she deserves. And yet your financial disclosure never mentioned the $280,000 in concealed debt, Marcus said from his seat, not even bothering to stand. Nor did it mention that your interest in providing for her began the same week you learned about a trust fund, after 18 months of complete silence. The judge did not ask for further argument. She simply closed the folder in front of her, removed her glasses, and looked directly at Vanessa for a long moment before speaking. Ms. Cole, this court has heard a great many custody cases, and very few of them make the underlying motivation quite this transparent. You are welcome to petition for supervised visitation once you have completed a court-ordered fitness evaluation and demonstrated a sustained, genuine commitment to your daughter's well-being that exists independently of any financial interest. Until such time, this court finds it is in the best interest of the minor child that primary physical and legal custody remain with Mr. Marsh. The judge did not take long to finalize the ruling. She granted Owen full physical and legal custody, terminated Vanessa's visitation pending a formal fitness evaluation she never showed up for, and referred the financial evidence to the appropriate authorities for further review. Vanessa's own attorney was seen shaking his head at her in the hallway afterward, gathering his files with the particular briskness of a man eager to be done with a losing case and the client who had misled him about it. Outside the courthouse, Owen stood on the steps in the pale October sunlight, Ivy's hand in his, Claire beside him, and for the first time in months, he let himself believe it was truly over. "It's done," he said, almost like he didn't trust the words. "It's done," Claire confirmed. Ivy tugged on Claire's sleeve. "Can we get ice cream now?" Claire laughed, lifting her up onto her hip. "I think that's exactly what today calls for." They walked down the courthouse steps together, an unlikely little family formed out of chaos and a sleeping toddler at a restaurant table, who had no idea that night that she was about to change two people's lives forever. Winter came, and with it, quiet mornings in the brownstone Owen had spent over a year restoring, now filled with the sound of Ivy's laughter echoing off freshly painted walls. Claire moved in slowly, cautiously, the way someone moves when they've learned the hard way what it costs to trust too quickly, and are still learning to trust warmth again. Owen never rushed her. He simply stayed, every day, proving with small, consistent acts what Vanessa had never bothered to prove with grand ones. On a snowy evening in December, 14 months after that first disastrous, wonderful dinner, Owen got down on one knee in the kitchen while Ivy clapped her hands and shouted that Ellie wanted to see the ring too. Claire said yes before he even finished the question, laughing and crying at the same time. And Ivy, without anyone asking her to, wrapped her small arms around both of them and declared that now they were a real family, official, and everything. They married the following June in a small garden ceremony, Ivy as the flower girl, scattering petals with the seriousness of someone completing a very important job. Marcus stood as best man, having become something between a brother and a guardian angel to them both. When the officiant asked if anyone objected to the union, the only sound was Ivy's small voice from the front row, loudly asking if it was time for cake yet, and the whole garden dissolved into laughter. Vanessa Cole's name faded quietly out of their lives, a cautionary tale among people who once envied her polish and her charm. Owen rarely thought of her anymore. There simply wasn't room for her in the life he had built, a life that started improbably with an apology, a sleeping toddler, and a stranger who chose to stay instead of walking away. She never completed the court-ordered fitness evaluation. 2 years later, a mutual acquaintance mentioned in passing that Vanessa and her husband had relocated out of state, their finances still tangled in litigation neither of them ever fully escaped. Owen felt nothing when he heard it, not satisfaction, not anger, just a quiet, distant nothing, the particular relief of a chapter that had finally, completely closed. The brownstone on Larkspur Street was finished by the following spring, its original crown molding restored by Owen's own hands, its stairwell banister sanded down to bare, honey-colored wood exactly the way it must have looked the day the house was built. Claire framed a photograph of the building's crumbling front facade from the day Owen first bought it and hung it in the front hallway beside a photograph of the finished home, a reminder, she said, that the things worth having usually look unsalvageable before they look beautiful. Ivy grew into a bright, fiercely opinionated 5-year-old who insisted on wearing mismatched socks to kindergarten and referred to Claire, without any prompting from either adult, simply as Mom. Claire cried the first time it happened, standing in the school pickup line, and had to explain to a concerned crossing guard that she was, in fact, having a wonderful day. A year after that, Owen and Claire welcomed a second daughter, a fierce, red-faced newborn they named Rosalie, and Ivy took to her new role as older sister with the same unshakable seriousness she'd once brought to guarding Ellie the elephant from strangers at restaurants. On quiet evenings, long after both girls were asleep, Owen and Claire would sometimes sit together on the brownstone's restored front steps, the same steps where he'd once sat shaking after Vanessa's first unwelcome visit, and talk about how strange it was that the worst version of that year had somehow led them exactly here. Claire liked to say that some of the best things in her life had shown up looking like disasters at first, an ambushed first date, a custody battle nobody thought they could win, a crumbling building everyone else had written off as beyond saving. Years later, when Ivy was old enough to ask how her parents met, Owen would tell her the whole story from the beginning: the diaper bag, the stuffed elephant with one ear, the strawberry pancakes, the courtroom, all of it, right up through the moment Claire said yes in a kitchen full of Snow White and Bun's cousin Ellie waiting patiently for her turn to see the ring. And every single time, Ivy would ask the same question at the end, wide-eyed and endlessly delighted by the answer she already knew was coming. And then what happened? And Owen would smile, pull both his daughters a little closer, and tell her that then, they simply got to live happily ever after, the ordinary, unglamorous, wonderful kind of happily ever after that gets built one Tuesday at a time, by people who choose, again and again, to stay.